All right, legends, grab yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and picture it. It's 1958. Television, it's still a novelty in many homes. It's in black and white, usually a wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. And then, stepping out of the shadows is Boris Karloff. Not as Frankenstein's monster, not buried under makeup, but as your guide into supposedly true tales of the supernatural. This was The Veil, and this week at the Alternative Pub, we're asking, is it a forgotten horror TV classic? And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Or you could just call me a tosser in the comments. It's up to you, really. Anyway, let's get into it. By 1958, Boris Karloff wasn't just an actor, he was horror royalty. He had already defined cinematic horror decades earlier. He was the face of Universal horror in the 1930s. But by the late 50s, he wasn't chasing monsters anymore. He had gravitas, he had presence. There was that voice that was calm, intelligent, almost reassuring. And while some former stars of the silver screen era looked down on the new medium of television, what's fascinating is that Karloff reportedly enjoyed working on The Veil because, for once, he wasn't the creature. He wasn't buried under prosthetics. He was the storyteller, the gentleman host, the elder statesman of horror. And you can feel that in the performances. Karloff also acted in the show as well as hosting, which gave him an opportunity to show off his range in the series. From his portrayal of the bumbling Sergeant Wilmore in Vision of Crime, which he was clearly having a blast doing, to the vintage horror vibes of the mysterious Morgan Debs in Girl on the Road. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The Veil didn't present itself as fantasy, it presented itself as truth. Each episode was framed as a supposedly real account of ghosts, premonitions, psychic phenomena, unexplained events. And in 1958, that was bold. Remember, this was pre-Amityville horror, pre-based on a true story horror marketing wave, and pre-found footage. This was early television experimenting with the idea of what if this actually happened? And that framing, it adds weight. It makes even the more modest episodes feel grounded. Now, here's the tricky bit. When we talk about classic horror sci-fi anthology TV from the era, the conversation is usually dominated by The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits. And rightly so. Those shows are giants in their field, but The Veil predates some of that mainstream supernatural television boom. It was part of that early wave exploring serious, adult, eerie storytelling on TV. It may not have had the same cultural impact, but it absolutely deserves a seat at the table because it helped shape the language of televised supernatural drama, and it did so with restraint. There was no big sci-fi spectacle, just atmosphere, suggestion, and performance. Part of the reason The Veil feels forgotten is its unfortunate production history. The studio went bankrupt before making enough episodes to sell to networks and get put into syndication. It was called by some the greatest television series never seen. And there were even rumours that Karloff was never paid for his work on the show. And without the constant reruns that The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits enjoyed, The Veil slipped into a kind of strange horror TV limbo where it lay waiting to be rediscovered. It wasn't until decades later on home video that individual episodes were released in their entirety. So, is The Veil a forgotten horror TV classic? Maybe it's not in the same league as giants like the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits, but it's historically important and it's atmospherically effective. And it also gave Boris Karloff something rare, a chance to age with dignity and horror, not as a monster, but as a master of ceremonies. And honestly, that alone makes it worth remembering. Let me know in the comments, had you heard of The Veil before this? And if so, what are some of your favourite episodes? Anyway, cheers.